Linear switches are like the Daisy Buchanan of my life. The green light across the bay is no different than the distance between me and a linear keyboard that may never come to love me. In a way, I'm both the narrator and protagonist of F. Scott Fitzgerald's magnum opus. These are two different characters, in case you haven't read. I've become disillusioned by the lifestyle. The lifestyle of the linear switch. With one truly romantic encounter of the linear switch, a romantic encounter I still remember vividly, I yearn for that true linear switch to love me. I am Nick Carraway, disillusioned and will eventually leave the linear bay to return to tactile and clicky switches, but I am Jay Gatsby, trying hard to find love in a linear switch, but will never receive commiserate feelings. This keyboard is my unrequited love letter to linear switches. In the attempt of loving linears, I've become disillusioned by the linear dream, the pursuit of happiness in the form of smooth, non-tactile switches. The linear dream I want seems to be as unsustainable and unattainable as the American dream. But for tonight, let's throw a party in the attempt to do the unrealistic, to love a linear switch. I may not love this keyboard, but it doesn't stop it from being okay at best. Here's what she has to offer. Gateron blacks with 78-gram springs, Lambo aluminum case, Chinese 60% PCB, when keyless bottom row, split backspace, no plate. And that's right, you heard me, no plate. What are you going to do? Call the keyboard, please? Well, fun fact, the Koreans beat me to it. That's right, if you've been in the keyboard community for some time, PCB-mounted builds aren't a new thing. It's a dated type of build that's not commonly used anymore. For those who are uninitiated with keyboards, most all keyboards are plate-mounted. The plate is usually a piece of metal, aluminum, that the switches sit on. This gives your keyboard a more rigid feeling when typing, as well as a more typical sound profile of a mechanical keyboard. The Koreans were, like with many trends in the keyboard community, the first to experiment with custom PCB-mounted builds as well as half-plate builds. Speaking of half-plate builds, here's a little plug. I might be doing a half-plate group buy soon. Let me know if you're interested. Back to this review thing. This layout is honestly a fun layout. Let's start with this elephant split in half in the middle of the room, the split backspace. The split backspace is very HHKB-esque and allows you to have an extra key. In this case, I just assigned them to normal keys that would normally be on the HHKB. Where's my backspace? Well, right where it would be on the HHKB as well, right above the enter. It's easier to reach with my stubby fingers and works out quite well for me since I'm used to the Unix layout. Moving your eyes downward on the right side with the split right shift. This split right shift is awesome. It's really easy to reach the FN key and allows me to reach what I need to reach there. Finally, at the bottom, we have a win keyless bottom row. A bit of a misnomer in this context without context, but here it goes. Older keyboards had no Windows key because there's no concept of that functionality on older computers. The term win keyless comes from older layouts that had 1.5U control, alt, and 7U spacebar. Because there is no Windows key, there is no keys between the 1.5U controls and alts. With the advent of the Win key, the blank space could be filled with 1U Windows key and the original name stuck. That's the history behind the win keyless bottom row, even though nowadays you will usually see them with a Windows key. That is eventually transformed into what we know today as the standard layout, which is 1.25 times 3, 6.25, and then 1.25 again times 4. But now this is a layout I love. It feels right to use this layout. Let's move on to the PCB. It's a cheapo 60% PCB that's really easy to program. Nothing special about it. MTEL32U4 microcontroller. Programming it is similar to the TATA 68. Yeah, that's about it. The keycaps on for this review are GMK Orange Dream, aka GMK Year the Monkey. They work, they're nice, thick ABS and double shot. Cherry profile, way to go. Definitely one of the simpler GMK sets out there, but the orange works really well. It's a nice colorway that works with this keyboard as well as with this cable, which was provided to me by Donut Cables. Check out his stuff at Donut Cables are totally moe. The next component is the case. The case is aluminum and pretty goddamn cheap. It's aluminum Lambo case, and how it looks, you'd think it adds more heft, but it's disappointingly light. It's also pretty inexpensive, so you definitely get what you pay for. Okay, I wanted to cover everything else quick to go over what a lot of people might be here to hear about. The PCB-mounted switches. How are they? Well, to hear my perspective, you need some context about me and linear switches. As a typical rule, I'm not the biggest fan of linear switches in almost all capacities. Sure, Gaterons are smoother than cherry, but I still haven't felt that real connection to linears that I've felt with clicky or tactile switches. The switches are 78-gram Gateron blacks. The heavier springs I swapped in makes the switches feel better in my opinion, and I think that's one of the reasons this is the best linear I've felt, also because it's PCB mounted. But what does it really mean for a keyboard to be PCB mounted? Without the plate, each key press feels different from plate-mounted builds. I know that sounds obvious, but think about why it would feel different. The plate normally absorbs a good amount of shock and impact from your fingers. There's no plate to do that. You're pushing straight onto the PCB. There's this flex that is ever so acutely there, enough to cushion the blows of your fingers and enough to give when you press down. One of the things about PCB mounted builds that you need to be wary of, that I wasn't too wary of, is the alignment of the switches. Without the plate for your switches to be popped into place, it's much easier to accidentally have a few switches slightly off of alignment, like with this keyboard here. None of the keys clash, but there are some awkward spaces here and there. When you put your finger down on the PCB mounted build, there is no hard clash of the plates. The PCB flexes and moves ever so slightly in unison with the direction you press down. This creates a cushion for your finger. While nice, I just have to say I don't think linears benefit the most of PCB mounted builds. And when it comes down to how I feel about linear switches, not the fact that they are PCB mounted, it's okay at best, and that's the truth. And this is one of the best linear switches and linear keyboards I have tried, but even at its best, it is, to me, okay at best. Nothing more and nothing less. And because of that, I still lament linear switches. After a day, I thought this keyboard had potential, and after a week, I saw that potential disappear. It has been ever so disappointing since, and not a horrible keyboard by any stretch, but she's certainly not the keyboard for me. This keyboard is the culmination of my disappointment in linears. It's blue ball in my love for linears. It's so close, but it doesn't get me off. I want to love this keyboard. This keyboard showed potential, but it couldn't close a deal. This keyboard will go down on the list of keyboards that have tried to please me, but couldn't. I'll be selling her shortly, so I hope you might be interested. Thank you for watching.